So we're gonna like. Hi Aniruddh. Hey. Hello everyone. Welcome to a brand new show, a podcast, or you can call it Chai Pe Chacha. In this series, we're gonna cover up most of our teams, how we work in an advertising world, basically how we think, plan, and execute. We are Changing Tree, aka CT, aka Creativity plus Technology. Without any further ado, let's quickly jump into CT Talks episode 101 called The Design. My name is Mohammad Amir Yusuf Khan and I am an Associate Creative Director. Today on CT Talks, we have Aniruddh, who's a National Creative Director.
Thank you.
Welcome to CT Talks, Aniruddh.
Thank you. Thanks.
So tell us something about you.
So I've been doing this for, I think, about 12 years now. I started with, I studied design in Srishti School of Art Design and Technology here in Bangalore. And from there, I quickly moved with my first job into the advertising world and started working towards design, figuring out how design works in advertising and, starting from your things like banners, things like ads, digital ads. And I've always been kind of interested in digital advertising, in social media. And so fast forward to kind of now and here we are.
That's crazy. So on this episode called The Design, so how do CT approach design, basically?
So I think when it comes to design process at Changing Tree, what we try to look at is we put the brand or the client first.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah.
What is their story? What is it that? What is the problem? What is it they're coming with, and where can we provide the solution? So a lot of it, the way that I deal with when a new brief comes in, for example, the first few set of questions that we ask are more about the brand, are more about who are we talking to, right? And what is their background, what is the history, what is their story? Because that storytelling is very important when it comes to what are you going to then, portray to the world.
Correct.
So from there we go into kind of cracking the brief, figuring out, okay, what are the questions that we have? And then moving forward, we'll get into developing the content, developing design, developing whatever it is that the brand needs. And during this process, of course, there's a lot of back and forth and talking with the client and seeing that we're in the right direction. And when it comes to the teams, again, it is a lot to do with put yourself in the brand's shoe, right?
Correct.
Because a lot of the times, the kind of brands that we work with, we are also consumers of those brands. So we are the ones who are going to be seeing what we do, or people of similar age groups. So it's important to kind of lead with that and lead with, basically being a little more empathetic towards what you're trying to do, who you're trying to speak to, what kind of story you're trying to tell. And by and large, that's what we try to aim for when it comes to the process. And of course, it changes from client to client, depending on what the brief is, lots of times what the timeline is. Sometimes we have to fast track that. But yeah, that's pretty much.
Is it a hurdle for you when you fast track something?
I think you kind of pick and choose sometimes. Like, there are times where you have the luxury of spending a lot of time on research, but sometimes you don't. And sometimes you can spend a lot of time, let's say, planning something. You go from thumbnail stage, you go to sort of a rough sketch, you go into then executing it and then finalizing the design. But a lot of the times, all this has to be scrunched up into, let's say, 2 days.
2 days, yeah.
So when I say you pick and choose, you basically try to see, okay, I'm going to focus on things that are more important, and that's why we always go back to what the brief is.
Yeah.
What is the ask? And a lot of times, if you've decoded the brief properly, then you will not face challenges with respect to timeline. Okay. Because you're able to compartmentalize everything and work backwards from the deadline. Yeah.
So as a whole, you've spoken about the process. I want to understand, where does the design team fit into this process?
So ideally what we try to do is we try to get the design team involved, or let's say one designer involved from the get-go. The moment the brief comes in, we try to make sure that that person is also in those meetings. So because a lot of the times things might get kind of lost in translation and all that might happen. So it's always a safer bet to involve the design team from the start. And I think what that helps them do also is understand the story the same way that anybody else in that meeting would. And then it is everybody's creativity and everybody's way of thinking that they will be able to decode that brief. So on the one hand, they will start off from the start, right?
Correct.
They'll get the brief and everything, and then so that it's a parallel process. So then the design team will also parallelly keep working on their own ideas.
Yeah.
And there is always, like, going forward, there's always a path that will converge with the copywriting team, with everybody else. And then we see how we can mold these ideas and come up with whatever is best for the brand. So that's what usually we do.
Nice. I want to understand, like, if a new joinee wants to enter this, industry, what matters, experience or skill?
I think I would say that for somebody who's joining new, I mean, they're already kind of, they've already kind of lost the bet on experience because they're fresher. But there's a lot of ways to sort of overcome that, because the general complaint that I've heard is that, okay, people always want somebody with, I'm a fresher, but people want with 2 years experience or 3 years experience. But I feel like that's where your skill matters as a fresher, because a lot of the times you will bring to the table something that, let's say, a so-called agency will not have, and you bringing that to the table is your strength then. So for somebody who is freshly into the industry, obviously skill matters, and if they have, let's say, a lot of the times they will have, like, how I would go about it also is I would look at whatever projects they have when they are applying. Now those could be college projects, those could be personal projects, whatever it is. But a few things that we try to look at is their motivation, is their proactiveness, right? Skills you will be able to see through, let's say, what kind of presentation skills that they've put into, because on a portfolio website you can do the basic uploading images, but you can also curate it nicely. So with things like Behance and stuff, especially. So when we try to look at somebody who's joining new, we try to look at these things. That are they proactive enough? Are they somebody who will be able to use their skill, even if they don't have experience, but use their skill as their strength and not fall behind? So coming back to, I mean, your initial question, I think for a fresher, skill matters.
Skill matters, 100%. What do you think, like, the new joinee should have, like the softwares he should know, the tool set he should know to enter this industry?
See, I think my personal feeling is that you don't have to be perfect at one thing. Like, there will obviously be people who will be looking for that, and you might find your place in that kind of an agency. But I feel like if you are a jack of all trades also, that kind of
obviously that
matters, because you have a working knowledge of things, and then the rest of it you apply and you learn as you go along. Right? But in terms of software specifically, I feel like obviously the regular Adobe software and stuff is there. If what we look at is if you have an additional set of skills, like, let's say, After Effects, Premiere Pro, maybe Cinema 4D or some kind of Blender or 3D modeling, then obviously that becomes a plus.
Plus point, 100%.
So it really depends on, I feel like, as long as you have a working knowledge of things that would apply to social media, because it's also an ever-evolving field, right? It's also, and with design itself, you can see that every day something is new is coming, something is changing. You can see trends, you can see all of those things. So I think to have that little bit of, let's say, skills in different software is something that would probably be to your advantage, as opposed to maybe being really, really good at only one thing, because then you kind of narrow it down for yourself.
Yeah, you can't do anything. That's very important. That's true. Now, as a designer, I'm also a designer. So, as a designer, sometimes I get into mind blocks. How do you overcome mind blocks in your situation?
I think it's a mind block is like, I feel like it's a very personal thing when it comes to, because it could be triggered by a number of things, right? How your day has gone. Maybe you got bad feedback. Maybe you got. Maybe you're struggling with just coming up with an idea. It could be anything. But I feel like when it comes to mind block, I think the one thing that I found useful is you just walk away from it. And by that I mean is that let's say you could be you could be struggling with something, trying to come up with an idea, trying to come up with a design, maybe doing a creative in some way or the other. Even if it's like a social media post or it could be a website. But you might find that, okay, I'm not being able to move forward. So I feel like first thing to do is to kind of walk away. Another thing I feel like that helps is show what you've done to somebody else who is in no way related to the work. Right.
Their perspective.
So because when you have that outside opinion, it will force you also to look at it differently.
100%.
From that person's perspective, right? And I think what also helps is in this same sort of wavelength to, when you walk away, maybe go have some tea, coffee, whatever you like, and take a break, speak to people. Speak to people about what you're doing. Speak to people about why you're struggling or what you're struggling with. And a lot of the times it could be either them solving that for you or it could be them just distracting you from it. Either way,
it helps.
It helps.
Either way it helps.
And because you're able to detach from it. So I think that's one way to kind of, at least for me, to come up.
I think even I do the same thing. Like change the topic.
Yeah, exactly.
For a while, just change the topic, and then you get back to it. Then you have fresh ideas.
You have, exactly.
Correct. So Aniruddh, how do you motivate your team? That's very important.
So I think like how I was speaking about the mind block thing as well. I think what we try to do is one of the things to kind of keep harnessing your creativity is to do something slightly like in the creative zone, but slightly different from what your regular day-to-day work is. So like, for example, what I do with the team is something we call a creative session and a knowledge session. So we do this every Wednesdays and Fridays, where we'll gather as a team in the morning before work starts, and for our knowledge session, one person will share some kind of knowledge with the rest of the team.
Correct.
So it could be a hack that they learned in Illustrator, for example, or Photoshop. It could be something like, okay, how do I get over negative feedback? So each person comes up with their own things, and then they basically share that knowledge with the rest of the team. And then what we do on a Friday is we do the creative session, which is basically creative exercises. So again, one by one, everybody will come up with one exercise for the team. So I think some of the things that we've done before, like what we have even in fact posted on our social media also on Changing Tree, is we had done, using design trends, we had done some movie posters. Or for example, let's say we'll go something which is a little bit further away from working on a laptop. We'll work on paper. So we'll say that, okay, maybe just, spend half an hour drawing each other's portraits, but without looking at the paper. And so these are just like, sort of offbeat kind of exercises that keep you engaged, that keep you kind of creatively involved.
And upscale your skill set as well.
And it doesn't really like go too further away from your regular work, and then you yourself feel that sense of freshness and that sense of motivation.
100%.
So these are some of the things that we do
That's a
to
beautiful
get that,
yeah, that's a beautiful way to motivate a team, because obviously in our field I think we have to gain knowledge as much as possible, and we have to upscale our skill set by the new trends and stuff.
Yeah,
that's
correct.
amazing. And in this process, like, now we've spoken about motivation and everything, I want to understand, like, how do you strategize a brand?